Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, bienvenue. I should say karibu sana. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great delight to welcome you this evening to the delegation of the Ismaili Imamate. My name is Khalil Sharif. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Aga Khan Foundation Canada. And it is a singular delight to welcome you this evening here at the delegation in Ottawa. We are at this place where the three rivers meet. For centuries, maybe even millennia, the indigenous people of this area, the Anishinaabe people of this area, have stewarded this land, and they've done it in a very particular kind of way, because for millennia their tradition has been to every season welcome indigenous people from a very large catchment area that these rivers serve. And every season they would bring people here and in the spirit of great hospitality exchange absolutely goods and services, but also relationships and ideas. And it is in that spirit taught to us by the indigenous people of this land of exchange, of relationships, and of ideas that we welcome you all here this evening. We are in the midst of many distinguished guests and visitors from around the world, and I want to welcome you all here. A very special welcome to Anita Vandenvelde, the Parliamentary Secretary for the Ministry of International Development. And we have a special guest joining us today from Kenya. Dr. Abraham is the Principal Secretary of Foreign Affairs of Kenya, who is here on an official mission to Canada as part of the bilateral, very important bilateral relationship between Canada and Kenya, and was able to make time in the heavy program to join us for this evening. So, Dr. Abraham, thank you to you and your colleagues for joining us here, colleagues from the High Commission of Kenya to Canada. It's a delight to have you with us, and I know a number of other distinguished guests. Now, tonight is a very exciting night. It's a collaboration between Aga Khan Foundation Canada and the Canadian-Mathare Education Trust, the CME Trust. And you're going to get an extraordinary introduction to all of this over the course of the program we have. But I want to just pluck on three strings as we begin about what makes this collaboration between Aga Khan Foundation Canada and the CME Trust this evening so exciting. And they are about education, it is about civil society, and it is about replacing walls with bridges. It is, of course, on the very short list of humanity's great challenges today to prepare our young people for a rapidly changing and disorienting world, and indeed to prepare the world for those young people. And the work of youth development and education is high on the agenda of every country in the world, and if it is not, it should be. And especially in parts of the world where young people are the vast majority of the population, this heavy responsibility is one that all of humanity must be invested in. And this is a passion and a commitment that Aga Khan Foundation and the Aga Khan Development Network globally share with the CME Trust, this commitment to education, to investing in young people and investing in lifelong learning. And I'm delighted that among the people you'll meet tonight are a scholar of the CME Trust program, emblematic of the extraordinary work that the CME Trust has done over the years, and a colleague of mine, the Dean of the Aga Khan University's Institute for Educational Development, which is again emblematic of the century-old investment that the Aga Khan Development Network has made in Africa and Asia in education, in schools, in supporting the education sector, in building teacher education capacity and research for the system. These are long-standing areas of commitment. So I'm delighted that the commitment to education is bringing us together tonight. But it is not simply that, because CME Trust, like the Aga Khan Development Network, also represents a commitment to civil society support to these issues. His Highness the Aga Khan, when he spoke to Parliament in Canada in 2014, he said that civil society is one of the most powerful forces in our world. This idea of citizens coming together for public purposes, energized by their commitment to contributing to each other's shared future, is increasingly one of the most important foundation stones for a shared world of more peace and more prosperity and more pluralism. And the energies of civil society to support and scaffold public systems, governments, communities, is becoming increasingly important. And I think tonight you'll see the power of collaborative civil society efforts coming to fruition in absolutely critical ways. And so I'm delighted that CME Trust and AKFC have been brought together by this shared commitment to the role of civil society institutions in the great development challenges of our time. And finally, tonight is a story of international bridge building. The CME Trust is the Canada-Mathare Education Trust. And the hyphen in Canada-Mathare does a lot of work. Because this is also a time when the forces pulling us apart feel like they're gaining strength and need to be met with forces of equal strength bringing us together. That the strings tying us together have to become stronger than the scissors cutting us apart. And CME Trust, like AKFC, shares a common vision for what international bridge building could look like. That in this world of rapid and bewildering change, that our connections between and among peoples that are built, connections absolutely that might facilitate resource flows, certainly, that's absolutely essential. But much more than that, build relationships, create connections and bridges of understanding, of empathy, and of collaboration around shared challenges. These bridges are bridges which are more important today than they have been for a very, very long time. And it reminds me of the Aga Khan's word when we laid the foundation stone of this building in 2005. He said, a guiding principle of the Imamat's work, of his work, is to replace walls that divide with bridges that unite. And I'm very happy that this commitment to international bridge building also brings us together tonight in this very important collaboration. So with those ideas and ideals in front of us, I am very happy to be welcoming you here tonight to thank the CME Trust for working with us in such a rich way, and to the ongoing support of Global Affairs Canada in both of our programming around the world and in facilitating the work that we do in bringing people together here in Ottawa. And with that, I'm delighted to ask Anita Vandenbeld, the Parliamentary Secretary for International Development, to come and say offer some welcoming remarks. And as she stands here, I just want to say that, of course, in our parliamentary tradition, we are blessed with the leadership of representatives who are elected by citizens for whatever reason citizens elect people. But in this particular case, we are blessed that the Parliamentary Secretary for International Development herself brings an extraordinary career at the intersection of international development, human rights, governance, and gender equality. A lifetime of service with institutions who have dedicated themselves to serving these issues across Africa, across Asia, across the Americas. We are very lucky to have today in this office someone who brings such a depth of personal commitment and professional skill in the very issues that we are discussing tonight. So, Anita, if I might, it's a particular pleasure to have you with us tonight, and I'm very happy to welcome you to offer a few opening remarks.
Well, Thank you so much for that absolutely wonderful introduction. Principal Secretary, High Commissioner, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is such a pleasure to be here. Bienvenue tout le monde, Kwe Karibu. I am so happy to be able to be here with the Canada-Mathare Education Trust and the Aga Khan Foundation. And I appreciate the invitation tonight to be able to be here on such an important evening and on such an important topic. It seems particularly fitting that we're meeting here during the African Union's Year of Education, because education has the power to change the shape of a life. Education opens doors. It changes lives, and it transforms communities. This is especially true for girls living in vulnerable communities, where they are 2.5 times more likely to be out of school than boys. At the same time, with 3 out of 5 people under the age of 25, Africa has the youngest population of any continent today. And we know, when given the education and the skills that they need, these same young people can help drive the change for their communities and their country. And I like what was said earlier about preparing the young people for the future, but preparing us for the young people as well. Last year, Canada invested $535 million to help strengthen education systems around the world and to ensure that the most vulnerable had access to education. And more than 40% of this funding was invested in Africa. This is important because every year, tens of millions of young people from the continent will be set to join the labor market. But first, they need the skills and the training that will help them to reach their potential. Pour permettre aux enfants d'exercer leur droit d'aller à l'école, nous devons créer des communautés prospères qui poursuivent les droits de l'enfant et promeuvent l'égalité pour les filles. We need resilient and adaptive learning environments. And we need everyone that is in the tent to make this happen. That's why organizations like the Aga Khan Foundation, working at the national level, are so important. And Canada is very proud to support AKFC's Foundations for Education and Empowerment project in East Africa to improve national education systems at the primary and pre-primary level and to advance gender equality. Nous reconnaissons également que les petites organisations de base ont un rôle tout aussi important à jouer dans la réalisation d'un véritable changement. That is why Canada has partnered with the Canada-Mathare Education Trust, an organization dedicated to raising the level of education and empowering young people in the Mathare Valley of Kenya, a region where secondary school education can sometimes simply be out of reach. A region where too many young people are left out of school, putting them at risk of being forced into child labor, early marriage, drug trafficking, and crime. But with the Government of Canada's investment of $743,000, CME Trust is implementing an education program that will improve the economic status and social welfare of 150 marginalized girls and young women in the Mathare Valley. This year, CME Trust awarded scholarships to 75 secondary school students and 55 post-secondary students. By providing these scholarships, CME Trust is ensuring that these young people can develop their talents and put them to use positively. And we're fortunate to have one CME Trust scholar with us here tonight, Victoria Anyango Oching. Everyone here tonight knows that education is a fundamental right. Education is how we break the cycle of poverty and transform communities, countries, and the world. In supporting organizations like AKFC and the CME Trust, we hope to create a critical mass of educated youth that can transform their lives, their families, their community, their country, and the world. And I can also say I really like the theme Rise and Thrive. I think that that captures very well exactly what a generation of young people on the African continent are doing and can do, especially when they're able to get the education and the skills that they need. So thank you very much. Merci beaucoup, miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Parliamentary Secretary, for those lovely words to start us off this evening. We're going to now move immediately to the program, and I'm going to ask our panelists to come up now. We've got, first of all, Victoria Anyango Ochieng, who has just been introduced, who is here as a CME Trust scholar, studying in the U.S. And from Mathare, and we're delighted, Victoria, to have you here. My colleague, Jane Raria, who is online from Dar es Salaam at some extraordinary hour, joining us tonight. Jane is the Dean of the Aga Khan University's Institute for Educational Development, which I'll simply say, among many of its distinctions, has had decades of support from Canada and from Canadians. In fact, the founding support for the Institute for Educational Development in Dar es Salaam came from an extraordinary group of philanthropists in Alberta, along with then CEDA, who helped us get this going. So I'm delighted that Jane is with us from the Institute for Educational Development at AKU. Cheryl Urban, who is the Assistant Deputy Minister for Sub-Saharan Africa at Global Affairs Canada. Cheryl, thank you for being here as well. And all of them to be moderated by the inimitable Jennifer Elms, our very own regional gender equality advisor for AKF in Canada and in the US. And as you'll see, a mix of substance and wit that will guide us through the rest of the evening. Jennifer, over to you.
Well, thank you so much. Welcome to all of you, to our distinguished guests and speakers. It's my absolute pleasure to be here moderating this conversation today. And if just the beginning conversations I've had with our esteemed panelists has been any indication, I think we're all in for a treat for this session. We're going to dive right in, and as our welcoming remarks have revealed, quality education is absolutely a basic right. It's the formula that's needed for improving quality lives, for transforming individuals and communities in the future. However, in many areas around the globe, unfortunately, access to education is just not possible. And Mathare Valley is one of those areas. So Victoria, I wanted to start with you and ask you, what was it like growing up in Mathare Valley, and what were the challenges that you faced, particularly as a young girl?
Do I use this? Oh.
You go ahead.
Hello. I'm glad to be here. So Mathare Valley is a slum. And as we all know, the single stories about slum, it's a place of violence, a place of poverty, it's a place of early pregnancy, it's a place of a lot of bad things that we don't like to associate human life with. And as much as I would like to say that this is not the situation in Mathare, it is. And the girls in Mathare, every single day they have to survive through this. In Mathare, we survive on less, and we have to compromise and learn how to live with this less. I mean less in terms of opportunities to get education. We have less schools, we have less libraries, we have less access to mentors, people who we can see. Chimamanda, one of the African women who I look up to, gave a really powerful speech on the dangers of a single story. Mathare has one. I grew up seeing people who are older than me, they were young, they went to school, they went to high school, not all of them, a few of them. And beyond that, what happens? Pregnancy. They become, teen moms, and another cycle begins. This child grows up, and they go to the same school and end up, back to the same cycle of poverty. So yes, life as a young girl in Mathare is one that is full of challenges. It's full of limitation. and it's full also of resilience, because through this, if you want to make it out of Mathare, you have to demonstrate a lot of resilience, a lot of power, a lot of will to get it out of that place.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I'd love to now invite Professor Raria to speak a little bit about your experiences from a teacher's perspective and as the dean of a university. So do you mind sharing with us your perspective and your observations on barriers to education that you have witnessed and what challenges that you have encountered in championing gender-responsive systems in education?
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Good evening to every one of you. I think the things that I've witnessed as a teacher and as a dean now within an institute that's actually championing girls' education is very much what Victoria has pointed out. But some of the barriers that stand out for me is I find that one is the socioeconomic issues. You find that those in the lower socioeconomic status are most likely to drop out of school or not even go to school because there's so much pressure on them to contribute to the family income. And this was much more apparent during COVID. In all the three countries, that is, when I talk about the three countries, I'm talking about Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Great strides had been made in trying to improve enrollment in primary schools, for example, and transition to secondary school. But all this got rolled back during COVID because many girls dropped out, many got pregnant, boys stayed out because they're trying to get some income for their families. The other thing the other barrier that works against girls' education and generally inclusivity in education is the lack of capacity amongst teachers and school leaders. Not many of them are aware, not even many. I'd just like to say, teachers and school leaders are not aware of gender issues in education, and they just do not know how to address this. Along with that is the lack of pedagogical capacity to teach in inclusive ways that actually work at retaining boys and girls in school. Also, the lack of awareness among communities from which these children come. The community is steeped in a lot of biases that do not work in favor of children, particularly girls, continuing with their education, and then this works against them. So as a teacher, this is something that I've had to fight throughout my teaching career, as well as work for as a dean at the Institute, trying to change these perceptions, trying to capacitate teachers and school leaders in ways that make them be able to provide safe learning environments for boys and girls in school. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I know later in our program, yes. Thank you so much. I know later in our program we're going to come back to you to ask about some of these solutions, but before we move ahead, I'd love to come to Cheryl to ask. I know you've had tremendous experience in the region, you visited Mathare. What have you observed as some of the challenges to transforming these systems on the whole, in making it responsive and making them inclusive?
Okay, yeah, you can hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I visited Mathare in September, and it was a very impactful experience on me. That's why I'm here, because I didn't stop talking about it after I got home. People welcomed me. I met the scholars. They were open with me and shared some of the challenges that they'd had, and I got to see their accomplishments as well. I found it very inspiring, and I was also left with a sense of, I felt like a power, like a personal power that people had. And it really struck me that what were they missing? Sometimes people were just missing the opportunity And that hyphen there, it's about creating the opportunity because people are ready. They'll step in if they get the door open for them. I've been actually focusing on education since the beginning of my career because I began my career in Indigenous Services Canada, and I was working on education. So in Canada, we also are looking at what are some of the barriers to education here. And there we were looking at problems like systemic problems and needing to empower. Other challenges are cultural norms that we want to address. Just poverty, if parents want to send their children to school, but they can't afford to, or they can't afford all their children, and violence. And, you hear stories about people not wanting to send their kids to school because they're scared about them going. There's an economic impact that the Government of Canada understands, and that's why we invest in education as a priority. We know that it can create economic growth. It's quite a simple formula. People become literate, they're more employable, they have more economic stability themselves, and especially women, they invest back into their children, and then they create intergenerational benefit for it. And and then finally, I'll just end that there's also social benefit because women are empowered to make informed decisions about themselves, about their own lives. And so this is why we think it's really important.
Thank you so much. Well said. And as we talk about systems and strengthening, we've spent a bit of time here now talking about the barriers, and the barriers are tremendous. And as Dr. Ravia has said, trying to overcome this at the systems level has its own challenges. So how to empower one individual, but also transform the environment to ensure that they rise and thrive. And so, education system strengthening initiatives and locally driven solutions are critical to improving this access to education. And CME Trust, since 2006, I believe, have supported almost 300 students in Mathare through secondary school scholarships. Absolutely unbelievable. So Victoria, I'd love to get your bird's eye view as a participant of this program. What has been your experience? How has CME Trust supported you in this journey and helped you to overcome some of the barriers that you've just shared with us?
Thank you so much. So let me share a little bit about how I got the CME Trust scholarship. So I finished primary education, and I was the best in my school. I was very, very much hopeful of getting a scholarship and being able to pursue secondary education. My story is reflective of a lot of people in Mathare. If you can't get a scholarship, then it's nearly impossible for you to get to high school. And even if you get to high school, it's so hard to have a consistent education. So I heard of CME Trust, applied and got in. And CME Trust, what it has provided me with, as I would say, it has been a breakthrough not only for me, but also for my family. I am a firstborn, and they provided me with a scholarship. So I was able to go to school, and I did not need to worry about, being sent at home because of school fees. That meant that as I was studying, I was more calm. Mentally, I was okay. My mom back at home, she could focus on the younger kids, because she's a tailor, and the little that she gets, she was able to focus on, bringing up these other people. But apart from that, CME Trust also has some of amazing programs that are not found in all scholarship programs. Every single holiday, we have a one-week holiday program, and during this time, we get the opportunity to meet people of different professions. When I said Mathare has a single story, I meant we really are so limited in terms of the people that we interact with. We don't get to see doctors daily. We don't have an uncle who is a lawyer. If I dream of becoming a mechanical engineer, I won't get to know what that entails until I get to university. And during this holiday program, CME Trust gives us that opportunity to meet these people. We meet with politicians, we meet with doctors, we meet with lawyers, we talk with them, we interact with them, and we get to see. And there's power in just, getting a feel of what something is. Personally, I grew up knowing that I wanted to be a policewoman. This was because I saw it in a book. But I never got, I saw, as I was reading, I saw a picture of a police, and I wanted to be that. So there's so much you see something and you get exposed, you get empowered, and you feel like you can. So getting in to interact with these people really means a lot. It means we start envisioning ourselves in these spaces, and even as we go with our lives, we start living, believing that we can be whatever we are. Apart from that, we have Wezesha Kike. Wezesha Kike, I'm wearing the shirt today. It's a community approach to gender equitable education. I am a Wezesha Kike champion, and what we do, we have been trained. We go to schools, we go to orphanages, we go to youth groups, and we train them how they can incorporate the concept of gender in the different capacities in the works that they do. This is a skill, because right now I can facilitate. I can teach other people. At school, I have hosted a radio show talking about how the school can enhance, gender equality. So these are some of the things that Simitrust is doing, just to mention, to help support us. And I feel very much empowered. Being able to speak here, being here, it's capacity of Simitrust. Yeah.
Fantastic. I believe that deserves a round of applause. And we are so glad that you're here with us to share all of this today. Professor Raria, I hope we still have you there. Yes. In your role as the university dean with the Institute of Educational Development, a lot of your work, as you were saying earlier, is about supporting teacher training colleges, transforming teaching environments to ensure that they're safe, that they're inclusive, that they respond to the needs of both boys and girls. Can you share a little bit more about some of those innovations and solutions that you've been working on and implementing?
Okay, so thank you. The first thing I must say is working with what I'd call the basics. What we have found out is the teacher is quite pivotal to girls' education in schools and even boys' education. And what happens, because of lack of awareness, the teachers do not know how to work in these areas or in the area of gender and inclusion to be able to keep the girls in school, get them, give them hope, and enable them to continue with their lifelong education. So first and foremost, we work with tutors and try to develop an understanding around gender issues in education. And this means capacitating them in just this particular, what are gender issues? Why are they important? Why does it matter, and what difference does it make to a student when you take these things into account? But most importantly, we also capacitate them in the area of their pedagogical practices. Now, being able to teach in ways that develop their thinking, that enables them to question, that enables them to be able to speak. Because one of the things that I have observed over time is that many girls lack a sense of agency and they suffer from a very low self-esteem. Now, for girls to be able to have the confidence, for example, to be able to speak the way Victoria is able to speak, to have that confidence in themselves, the teachers really have to create environments and use teaching practices that bring this out in the girls as well as the boys. Now, one of the things that we now do is build the capacity, we work, and also work around the curriculum. We have been working with the teacher colleges and enhancing their curriculum from a gender perspective, so that teachers then become very well aware of this, the way they teach, the way they group the students in class, etc. And this is passed on to the teacher trainees because we feel that you need to really start at the root. You may make a policy up there, but its implementation can be very difficult. So you have to start with the teacher trainees. But alongside that is capacitating school leaders. These are the gatekeepers for any reform that any teacher wants to do to bring about in any school. And we have found that when we work with school leaders and capacitate them in the area of gender and inclusion, wonderful things happen in school. They see these girls and boys differently. They put in place many things that they would never have considered. And these are some of the things that we are doing as an institution and trying to transform the way learning is happening for many girls in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania.
Wow, thank you so much. And I just want to take from one of your words there and stick on it is that word transform. And it sounds like the work that you are doing is truly working within the system to transform those underlying causes that perpetuate some of these inequalities in education. And so by working with teachers, working through the colleges, there's this focus on sustainable solutions, and that's just so exciting, so exciting. Thank you so much. Global Affairs Canada has supported the education of children and youth for decades. And has really had this incredible focus on local solutions, on gender transformative sustainable change as well. So Cheryl, I wonder if you could share with us, what is Global Affairs Canada's approach to transforming this system, to addressing gender barriers at the secondary and the post-secondary level?
So I think right now it all comes down to our feminist international assistance policy. And the way I think of that is it's like a philosophy. It's a philosophy where we did a lot of consultation and we determined that the best way for us to collectively achieve the Sustainable Development Goals is to empower women and girls and is to invest and ensure that we reach the vulnerable and the most marginalized. And the calculation that we're making is that if we take that approach, we are going to be able to address poverty, we're going to be able to address gender equality, employment, security, and overall the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's in this context that we operate and we invest in education. I have to say that listening to the professor, it was a bit reassuring because she was talking about areas in which it's important to invest. And one of the first things I had in the areas in which we invest is teacher training. So I think we got it right. But we take kind of a comprehensive approach. And so that includes investing in teacher training, peer mentoring, community outreach, engaging with males, technical, vocational, and then building agency. And I think the professor also was talking about building agency. So we have seen signs that this does have an impact because we want to check on results. So when we look at our projects, some of them will see an increase, for example, in a secondary school of 20% greater enrollment. So we know that kids are being able to go to school and that matters.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Victoria, I'd love to hear about your experience right now studying abroad. So before we came up on the stage, we were connecting, you were mentioning that you are now studying in, I believe it's North Carolina.
Yes.
Fantastic, congratulations.
Thank you.
I think you just completed your first year. So do you mind sharing with us how that experience has been? And in particular, are there any insights or opportunities that you are seeing that you would like to take back to Kenya?
Thank you for that question. I go to Davidson College, and it's a small liberal arts college, and I'm really, really happy to be in that space. Davidson College offers education, and how I was traditionally raised, education is you go in class, a teacher teaches you, you know the English, you know the science behind something, and that's it. But going to this institution has really opened my eyes, because I am having this perspective of education as a tool. It empowers you to find your own path. We are all there because we are motivated by something. It might be climate change, it might be gender equality as I am, it might be poverty, a lot of things. But there isn't a specific way, or you're not being told, do this and then you'll do this. You find your own path. And it's one thing that I've really gotten an opportunity to. I have been able to explore. in terms of the classes that I've taken, in terms of the different grants that I've been able to get and be able, to do. Just a few months ago, I was in attendance of the Harvard Business Conference, and at the conference I met a lot of amazing people, really amazing people. One lady was somebody who was working in agriculture, and I was talking to her because I'm somebody who's interested in entrepreneurship, and I told her, oh, I'm thinking of this and this and this and that, and she actually gave me a good insight into the approach that I should take. So why am I telling you all this story? So whatever I'm trying to drive at is the kind of education that I'm getting at Davidson College is one that not only takes me to class, it gives me the opportunity to attend conferences, to meet people who are in spaces that I want to see myself in. I see consistency in terms of the different programs that they have to ensure gender inclusivity. From as simple as always having a pad in our washrooms, to always the constant reminders that, this is a gender inclusive space, to representation in terms of the professors. I'm seeing female professors winning awards. One of my favorite spaces on campus, it's called the J Hart Hub Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Our director is a woman. So I see a lot. I get supported to go to different events, different conferences. And above all, I get to meet people who help me align to the kind of path that I want. I meet future employers. I meet people who care about the things that I do. So yes, and if this was to be brought back to Kenya, I would love for CB to be in a position where they can not only provide secondary education, I know they also provide a little bit of support for post-secondary students, but if they were in a position to give our scholars an opportunity to go to these conferences, an opportunity to meet the people they envision themselves, wanting to get job shadowing opportunities, get opportunities to travel, So yeah, and then our government also, I think they could do the same. Just open up opportunities for people to explore, to define their own end product of what education is. Yes.
Fantastic, thank you. Your energy, your excitement, the obvious joy that you have in doing what you do, I can feel it right here on the stage, and that's very, very exciting. Professor Raria, I'd love to also talk to you a little bit about, opening the doors to this type of innovation and recognizing that there are these challenges across the region. So we know from recent statistics that enrollment is increasing. This is incredible for East Africa, but also budgets are not increasing or not increasing at the rate that is needed. So I'd love to get your thoughts on, what does this mean? How can teachers, as such a crucial role holder in opening up the doors to education and the opportunities for students, how can they be supported in these constrained environments?
Well, I think that, first of all, as I had shared earlier, one crucial group of people who can really support teachers are the school leaders themselves. Once the school leaders take on the role of being gender advocates, should I say, gender equality advocates, then they open the spaces for the teachers. The other way of supporting the teachers is ensuring that the teacher training program factors gender issues. At our institute, we've been offering gender in education as an elective program, but we've realized that every teacher needs to know about these issues in order to be able to help the girls and the boys thrive in schools. A recent survey that we did amongst our students just a month ago showed us that 90% of the teachers we're teaching had never dealt with gender or considered gender issues in their classrooms, and they don't know how to deal with that. but they recognize its importance. Now, that was very alarming. So very quickly, I've sat with my team. We are now working with an organization based in Kenya, and what we're trying to do is to make this course compulsory for anybody who registers for education in our institution. So it's very important that this becomes part of the curriculum. The other issue is actually putting in, if you listen to Victoria, she's been talking about the things that have gone on beyond the classroom. Now, in my work with other organizations, what we found out is that enabling the school environment and the school community to be more engaged in these issues really helps the teachers and helps the students in the school. So a simple thing as having a gender desk and ensuring that whoever mans the gender desk goes a long way in empowering girls and boys in school to talk about the violence, to talk about issues that are bothering them. It helps to give them a sense of agency and be able to speak out. Engaging community members especially the school boards, in being aware of issues around gender inclusivity and supporting the schools and supporting teachers will go a long way to support teachers and to make teachers be able to feel comfortable in dealing with these issues, but also working on the teachers themselves, because the biggest barrier actually is usually the teachers' biases and misperceptions around gender issues in education.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to ask a follow-up question on that. So I was recently in Uganda doing a visit on a project that is focused on girls' education. And while I was in the schools, again, discussing what the teachers were doing and seeing the environment that they had created with the learnings that they had got through gender-responsive pedagogical training and what have you, the one question they were crying was, how can we get more? We want more. This is transforming how we teach. So I'd love to ask you the question, with your insight across the region, what would be your advice or recommendations to institutions such as ourselves, the AKDN, to be able to improve and expand this in future?
It's interesting. I also get asked a lot that kind of question many times by ministry officials whenever I visit them. Why are you only working with 2 colleges? Why are you only working with 1 college? Now, I think my advice would be that there needs to be an expansion. We need to develop capacity across the regions in which we work. At the moment, if you look at us, we are working at the coast of Kenya, in the northwest Nile of Uganda, and in the southern part of Tanzania. Yet there's so many areas around Kenya that need a lot of this support, as is in Uganda and in Tanzania. So one, we need an expansion. We need to have what I'd call champions. So champion colleges that work with other colleges, because I believe in sustainability. We won't be there forever, all the time at the center of everything, but we need to capacitate colleges, ministry officials, etc., so that they can keep this going down the line. So one is building systems and capacitating the people within this system so that it can become a culture. Once something becomes a culture and a way of doing things, then it's more likely to be sustained than when you just have someone walking in, doing a few things, and then walking out. And that's what we'll not be doing. So the other thing is also working with institutions that reach across the country. Now, one of the things that we have done as the Institute for Education and Development is that in our work, for example, with school leaders, we have worked very closely with the agencies in the 3 countries that are actually have the mandate to develop the school leaders. And so what we've done is worked with them in reviewing their curriculum, given a lot of input in the curriculum that they're now offering to head teachers, for example, and we facilitate these programs together. And that way we see that as a form of sustainability. So for people like us who experience or who offer different ways of approaching education and doing education, if I can call it in that way, is working with government agencies that are mandated to work with teachers in this school so that they can provide that. But I can assure you that every time, even last week, last week I was in Uganda facilitating a 3-day workshop, and I was looking at the feedback. The teachers are saying, that's not enough, you have to come back, you have to make sure that the next phase, we have more days, etc., etc. So I think there'll just never be enough, but if we can use the systems in place, capacitate these systems, then we'll be able to reach others much more widely.
Fantastic, thank you. And still looking to the future, Cheryl, how can Canada further cooperation with regional entities to look at, again, expanding, as Professor Maria has said, these systems transformation approaches?
I think I'll focus my answer on two things. First, partnerships, and second, localization. And for Global Affairs Canada, when we talk about partnerships, it's at all levels. So today we had the Canada-Kenya Binational Commission discussions. Those country-to-country partnerships are essential and very, very important for us. We also look to Agenda 2063. We understand that this is the year of education and that guides us. And I would say that allows us to be appropriately responsive and to understand and to learn. We partner as well, if I go to more on the ground, in order to deliver, we have very essential partnerships, including with Canadian organizations, local organizations. And those partnerships are absolutely essential for Canada. And we are, I see us as having, we're always in learning mode. And I think one of the things that we have learned more recently is the value of localization. More and more of our programming is informed by what's on the ground and with local organizations, local leaders and communities. And I think that's incredibly essential. And I think Canada-Mathare Education Trust is an example of an organization. It's small, but it has a lot of impact and it's on the ground. And I think that those types of projects are very powerful.
Thank you so much. I know we're running out of time. Can you believe it? It's just been so interesting. So I'd love to give the last question to you, Victoria. So now, as you've just completed your first year of post-secondary, what is your ambition? What do you hope to achieve in future? And what does that look like?
Oh, thank you so much. That's a very... I have a lot of answers to that questions. Career-wise, after finishing my undergrad, I want to pursue my master's. I want to pursue my PhD. Did I mention what I'm currently doing? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm currently pursuing a bachelor's in economics and I'm minoring in environmental studies. That's because I have discovered a passion for agriculture. And I want to pursue that, whether as a consultant or as an entrepreneur. And so, yeah, I will do that to the PhD level. My hope, because Kenya is a very agriculturally rich economy, country, and not only Kenya, most East African, Sub-Saharan African countries are. I want to get into the supply chain and try to help connect our rural farmers with the market, locally and internationally. Yes. Apart from that, sorry. Apart from that, I am passionate about economics and economic policies, and I am particularly interested in developmental economics. My motivation being Mathare as a slum. And so I also see myself working in that sector. I want to help, whether it's our governor, whether it's organizations like Global Affairs Canada, or our country, to kind of help come up with projects, come up with policies, and also foresee the implementation of these interventions that help, to do away or like to cut the cycle of generational poverty. Yes, thank you. And then lastly, sorry, I said I am a gender equality ambassador. That doesn't end with CB Trust, because the work does not end with Mathare, it does not end with Kenya. I want to continue being, I'm a storyteller. I want to continue being that. I want my life, I want my work to be a motivation to other young people, not only girls. I want them to wake up every single morning and believe in their dreams, to pursue their dreams, to go into areas that they have been told, either by culture or by their circumstances, that they cannot step into. So I want to work with an organization that deals with gender equality, that deals with social mobility. And yeah, we are aiming for a world that is more gender equitable, a world that people have the opportunity and have the courage and to pursue their dreams. Thank you. Thank you.
I think we're at time, but I cannot leave the stage without asking this last question. If you had a message to share with the youth that are in Mathare right now, and even across East Africa, what would be the message you would like to share with them?
Wow. So to any kijana out there, by default, there will be limitation. It will be your family circumstance, it might be your culture, it might be the people who you see around. There is a lot of limitations that will be around. But I want to encourage you to see beyond that. You can be anything that you want. I know the opportunities are limited. Continue seeking. Before getting the Simitra scholarship, I applied to 10 scholarships and got denied. I was the best in my school, mark you. And I know it's a really hard journey to try and tap into these opportunities, but I know I am a Christian and I believe there is a God. If you believe in your dream and if you work for it, a door will open. And if not a door, a window will. Don't be limited by your culture, not by your economic status, not by what you have seen. If everybody in your family is a fisher, doesn't mean you have to be a fisher. You can be the first engineer of boat. So, yeah, that's all I can say. Don't be limited by your circumstance. Dream big and pursue your dreams.
Wow. Thank you so much, Victoria. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Professor Revia, for being with us. I'd love to open up the floor now to questions and answers. My colleague Uju, Carol, I think, are going to be supporting. If you have a question, if you would like to direct it to one of the panelists, then please just use their name if you can, and they will respond to you.
We can start with a question that we got on Zoom, if
Sure.
if that works. Great. So I believe this question is for Victoria, and this might be related to the question that you just answered, but the question is from someone named Kel, and it is, what message do you have to girls who are struggling to find their voice?
Wow. Let me tell a quick story about my life. So in my village where my ancestral home, we are raised to believe, or we are raised to know and live by the standard that to be rich, you have to be married to a rich man. Believe you me, there are people in my village who know that I am in the USA because I got a rich Muzungu to marry me. It will take time to prove them wrong. But I know once I do that, other people will follow in the same path. So to girls who are watching me, any girl in Mathare, any girl in formal settlements in rural regions, you will be told a lot of things. You will be told a lot of things that you cannot be. The culture, people will try to dictate how your path should be. But I want to tell you this. Life is never easy. It will not be. But if you believe in yourself, and if you can vision whatever you get, whatever you want, then you'll be able to seize it. I know there's a lot of challenges. I know a few other girls there, they don't even have access to basic things like food or even pads. And this might make you want to try other means, getting a boyfriend and all that, being in an unhealthy relationship. It's not worth it. In the long run, it's not worth it. Yeah. Just pursue your dreams, believe in yourself. That's it, believe in yourself. See yourself. If you want to be a doctor, live like a doctor. If you see it, you'll be able to seize it. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Moritz Schmidt. I work with Colleges and Institutes Canada on a vocational training program in Kenya, and done a lot of work with global affairs in the past as well. And my question is to the prof, who I think we should recognize. I think it's 2 a.m. in Nairobi. So very respect to you, Dean, for taking questions at 2 o'clock in the morning. I don't know what you're doing to stay alert, but it's working. So most of our work is in the post-secondary space, in vocational and technical training, and we do a lot of work in gender equality as well. And my question is, you know, I'm less familiar with this primary and secondary system. You work a lot with teachers. We do a lot of work with the Kenya School of TVET and others in the post-secondary system. From your perspective as an expert in this, what are some of the key differences between, you know, teacher attitudes, teacher college attitudes that you see from the secondary side versus post-secondary, especially on things like gender responsive pedagogy and those things, so the attitudes piece? And then kind of related to that, the mindsets with the leadership in these institutions. So if you had to compare your experience with leaders in secondary schools in relation to gender equality versus leaders in a TVET or in a post-secondary institution. So just some your perspectives on that, and maybe, you know, some of your suggestions on how to address some of those differences. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll say this, the higher the level of education, the more difficult it is around working around issues on gender and inclusivity. In primary schools, which are mainly headed, usually most primary schools will have women head teachers. And the culture in primary schools tends to be more family oriented and therefore more inviting for children. It gets worse when you get to secondary school. And this is where numbers begin to drop, enrollment numbers. And many a times, one thing that we don't talk about is that many young children find secondary school very hard. Then when it goes on to tertiary, which these are the TVET colleges and the university, etc., then more numbers drop. Now, it's the teacher attitudes get worse as you go up. You find that, first of all, teaching is very didactic, quite boring. And it does not take into account the kind of young people that we have around us today, most of the times anyway. And also, there's a lot of sexual abuse, sexual violence, a lot of bullying that goes on at these higher levels. It's not easy for girls who are studying in, for example, TVET institutions, it's very hard for them because they kind of appear very threatening to their male students. And so there's always a lot of putting down, etc., from what we get from the girls and what our studies have shown us. And the same goes to university. And what is interesting is that when you look at the university level, we've got more women enrolling in the private universities because, and I believe that one of the reasons is that the private universities tend to be a lot more welcoming around women with lots of opportunities there, as opposed to the larger public universities that are quite entrenched in their conservative systems and their traditional ways of doing things that just make life very, very difficult for young girls. So I find that the higher the level of education, the more difficult it is to get the teachers at these higher levels to think more openly, to be more receptive to different ways of teaching, to see classrooms as things that need to be, as environments that need to be more inviting for students and so forth.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Nazik Ayawi. I work for Equitas, the International Center for Human Rights Education, and for the last 5 years, we've been implementing a program with the support of the government of Canada in Africa and in Haiti, but in 4 countries in Africa, East and West Africa. And we've been working in gender equality, empowering girls and women, and what we've seen working, one of the barriers is, of course, gender-based violence, preventing girls from staying at school or going to school. So we've been working with parents, school leaders, teachers, and what worked is the training of trainers. So we bring all this, and the communities also, and we've been doing this from a gender perspective, but also from a human rights perspective. Education is a right. Going to school is a right for everybody. And so my question for you is, have you tried the train of trainers? Because that's something that helped. And so these teachers or these school leaders would be capacitated and will go to other places and share their learnings, and they will be champions of gender equality, of human rights and educational rights for girls. So that was my question. Thank you.
I guess that's for me, right? Okay. Thank you very much. That's actually a model we follow, and we normally call it developing the champion teacher, developing the champion leader. And what we do, apart from just capacitating them, is also developing the skills to work with others, develop others, train others, as well as lead their communities. And that's very important. That's a very important model. As I had said, that we cannot reach everyone, but what we try and do is that the few that we work with, we try to develop them as trainers, as you're calling them, trainer of trainers. We, besides developing their own knowledge and understanding of the issues that we wish to bring to the fore, we also then develop them as people who will need to work with others and facilitate the similar things with others. So yes, the trainer of trainer model works, and it's an approach that we use.
Hi, I'm Tracy Evans with Right to Play International. I think anyone is welcome to answer this question. I may once again be putting our dean on the spot very late in the day. I'm curious, in terms of, you're all obviously very knowledgeable about gender responsive education, international education. Where are you seeing the biggest gaps in the evidence at the moment? We know a lot about what works. what do we not know that you wish we had more evidence on to help influence our programming? Thanks.
I can also take that a little bit. Our government of Kenya has a lot of policies in books. I was recently just going through the menstrual hygiene policy of 2030 or something along those lines. And according to it, a lot of things should be being done in schools. We should be getting free pads and stuff like that. I went to school, and the only time we got pads is when somebody visited us and they thought of girls' need and brought them. Or I went to Simitra's, our holiday program, and received one. So seeing there's a gap in implementation, a lot of policies have been put in place, a lot of intervention mechanisms are put in place, but I think less is done on the implementation. So I think that is something to be looked into. Yeah.
If I may add, one of the things that you'll hear so often, like this evening, we've talked a lot about the barriers, the challenges, the issues. But one of the things that I find very interesting in my work around gender is listening to what works against all odds. And I think that that's where we now need to look into also to see what is it that's working against all these odds that can then be leveraged to a higher level to be able to make it be spread out to others. And this is an approach that I'm now doing. I am actually studying girls who are in school against all odds and trying to find out what has kept them going despite all these ages. And I think this is an approach that we don't do. We spend a lot of time looking at the barriers and whatnot, but not looking at the success stories and seeing what then needs to be built out of these success stories.
And maybe I'll just kind of add one more voice into that. When I reflect, I was at a conference around last year, and it was about women's economic empowerment. And the feeling around the table of all the people participating in this international conference was one of a little bit of worry that there might be some backsliding internationally on the issues that we thought we had been making progress on. And in particular, the one that was worrying us the most was cultural norms, because we were struggling to figure out how do we tackle that one more effectively. And that's something that preoccupies me, working within the Government of Canada and working with other stakeholders, is how do we do that? How do we do a better job of it? Because the feeling is that are we going against a tide more than ever? And that's the concern.
Sorry, we have a question here and then
Thank you very much. My name is George Zimmerman, and I'm a volunteer chaplain and work in Kenya at Multi Children's Family in Delaney. One of the things that we struggle with at Multi Children's Family is the sense of isolation. And it's very clear that there are organizations like yourself and the university, International, Canada-Mathare Education, that are working very hard to deal with the issues, significant issues of the poverty that kills in Kenya and East Africa. My question is this: are there attempts to try to bring together, not in a control or regulated way, but in a way to bring together the various organizations to create a forum for best practices? You were talking about, the things that you're looking for. Multi Children's Family has answers, I know, to some of those questions that you're looking for. And it seems to me that it would be very helpful if there was an organization, some sort of umbrella organization, to bring these various organizations together for mutual development and sharing. So that's my question. Is there an initiative going on to try to make that happen?
Well, maybe I'll just start by answering. I mean, I think there's a number of ways in which we try to do that. And I know for Canadian civil society organizations, they have forums where they can meet with each other and learn from each other, and then they meet with the Government of Canada, and we have those discussions. And then even there are international organizations that bring civil society together from different countries, and then we talk about best practices. And if we look at the work of our embassies and our high commissions, they're quite busy working within the community, always having discussions with various sectors to, I think those ones are especially relevant because it's specific to the context of that country or that region. And that is a quintessential element of aid effectiveness. And so I think it does happen in various ways, at least from the Government of Canada vantage point.
I can also share as well within the AKDN, so Foundations for Education and Empowerment, which we've mentioned earlier, essentially brings together 5 countries across East Africa to look at how to build systems for improving education. And it uses a localized approach. So in fact, AKF partners with the organizations in each respective country and also brings them together, which I think has been proving to be quite effective. And that component is called the Advancing Gender Equality Through Civil Society component. So there are opportunities, and I think that is catching fire even from kind of a movement level of organizations now learning from each other, sharing the challenges that they all face, and then coming up with solutions together. So there are also opportunities that are picking up momentum as well. Thanks for that question. Was there another question, or?
There was one over.
So we have time for one last question. Please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anita Haidari, and I have worked and I've been working with nonprofits for more than 10 years. And Al Khan Foundation has been a big part of my journey. I'm from Afghanistan, so I learned English, and that led me to get my undergraduate and then master's in the US. So big part of that. I'm very inspired by your story, Victoria, because it's very similar to what what my journey has been. And unfortunately, for women in Afghanistan, we don't have similar things anymore, but it's very, it's amazing to see other women thrive in that area and to see still a lot of work being done around the world for gender equality. My question is that when you talked about localizing efforts, I want to understand if there are best practices in cultivating and building relationships with local organizations or local leaders to work in difficult circumstances or situations in remote areas that not necessarily a lot of formal sort of groupings or formal organizations tend to exist. What are some of the best practices around that, if you have experience with that, or thank you.
Thank you for such a good question. I mean, because as I mentioned, this is something that we are kind of recently doing more of, and so we really are in learning mode about what we're doing. I would just say one highlight for me is our Women Voice and Leadership program. And it's always my favorite thing to do when I visit a country. I've visited 10 countries in the past year in Sub-Saharan Africa, and in many of them, when I visit, I get to see a Women Voice and Leadership project. And what I love about these is that we manage to find women who are at a very grassroots level fighting to make a difference. Like, they are fighters, and some of them have their own very compelling personal stories that drive them. And for example, I was in Kinshasa a couple of months ago, and I met a women's group that was being supported by Canada's Women Voice and Leadership program. One of them, and it was kind of this group of women doing different things. One of them was about trying to get more women political participation. Another one was about trying to help women at the grassroots level who were suffering from domestic violence. Another one was fighting for, health rights. And they were all together, and they when you are around these people, when they are together, and the fact that they are being supported as grassroots fighters, like human rights defenders, has there's something about it, and I feel like it's one of our best practices, and it's fairly recent. So I think we're going to keep working on that and keep investing in the Women Voice and Leadership program.
And we have one more question.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Mine is not a question. It's just to say thank you for CME Trust and everybody who is part of this movement. You can tell that for the last 16 years, even Mathare itself, because of empowering a girl child, even men have learned how to respect women. And that photo there tells a lot. So I just want to say thank you very much for the great work you are doing. And yeah, it's making a civic, whatever you call it in English, change. Thank you.
And on that beautiful note, I think we can call this part of the program to an end. And I'd love to invite Victoria Shepherd, who I've only just met her, but is also an absolute joy, to share some highlights and closing remarks. Welcome, Victoria.
So good evening. Is it on? Hello?
Do you want to use that one?
Yeah, okay, that's better. Good evening. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Asanteni sana. It is a joy to be here. I'm really honored. When I first stepped foot in Mathare 19 years ago, when Victoria was 1 year old, wow. I really could never have imagined this. There were no high schools in Mathare. There were no CME Trust programs in Mathare. And I and Charles, who you just heard from, and two of our great colleagues are the co-founders of the Canada-Mathare Education Trust. And I have been the past president. Well, I've been the president, I've been past president, and I'm now the program director on the Canadian board. And since 2006, we have been working with our amazing team in Nairobi, some of whom are up in the middle of the night. Thank you, team. And our beneficiaries, like Victoria, their families, to identify new opportunities, to identify barriers that needed attention. And, you know, we've been adept at pivoting long before it was a cool buzzword in the new way of speaking. For example, when our parents and guardians identified a need for their kids to have more support on the school breaks, you heard about our holiday program. So we added this program to really round out the skills that our students were gathering at school. When the landscape for employment changed dramatically in Kenya with a burgeoning middle class, we added a post-secondary scholarship program because we knew that was going to hold back these students from being employable. And when we saw that gender barriers were impacting the outcome for our girl scholars, we partnered with Global Affairs Canada and tried to tackle it head on. And you're seeing the results. They're remarkable. Students like Victoria exceeding everybody's expectations, not letting those stories hold you back, and achieving the unimaginable. As you've heard, she's only just getting started, so watch out. So this brings me to my many well-deserved thanks tonight. Parliamentary Secretary Van de Belde, it is an honor for you to be here with us. Thank you for giving us your time, your very insightful remarks, and indeed your professional career moving this organization ahead. We really appreciate it and sincerely thank Global Affairs for supporting CME Trust, the small, teeny, tiny organizations, and the AKFC Foundation around the world. We need it all. It's all part of that civil society we've been talking about. To Mr. Sharif, to the AKFC Foundation for partnering with us here for the great opening remarks. The team has been amazing. Rosemary, Sophia, Uju, thank you, thank you, thank you. And of course, the AKFC team behind the scenes who aren't up here, but we appreciate them very, very much and the refreshments you're about to enjoy. Jennifer. Sincere thanks to you for expertly moderating this panel, bringing your own also professional wisdom and knowledge to the stage. I was really impressed by the discussion and all the synergies. My head hurts from nodding so much. That was like quite amazing. But as we've talked about, we're only just getting started. And together, everybody here in this room and our organizations and our partners on the ground will keep moving forward. Jane, I am so impressed, 2 a.m. and how you can articulate all of these incredible lessons for all of us so that we can keep trying new things, being innovative, having new approaches so we can keep progressing in this space. So Jane, thank you so much. Cheryl, your invaluable feedback when you came back from Mathare was the spark actually for this event. So we all have Cheryl to thank for getting me very excited once again about bringing people together in a space for dialogue and to really accentuate that hyphen that I've fought for in our name for a long time. Our sincere thanks to you, your team of Global Affairs, the colleagues and partnerships, Maurice and Karen who are here with us tonight. You've really committed to tackling these problems by listening first, listening to experts like Jane, listening to the lived experience of people like Victoria, and listening to the feedback from tiny organizations like CME Trust and AGACON, Foundation of Canada. And that listening is really what's setting us on a good path. Victoria, you are CME Trust Guest of Honor here tonight. You are amazing. You are living proof that well-considered interventions and innovations do indeed empower young leaders in their communities to call out and dismantle the inequalities in education that is holding girls and young women back. You are an inspiration. We thank you for all the effort you put into being here, from undertaking the daunting task of applying for a Canadian visitor visa. This is no small feat. And taking time off from your summer research project. But especially we thank you for your courage and your commitment to sharing your story, having your voice on the stage, representing the voice of your peers from back home, and really setting us all up to hear the voices of those that matter most, our collective future. So thank you. And finally, thank you to all my CME Trust colleagues and the CME Trust family. Thank you to everybody at the AKFC who has made this partnership so easy and smooth and welcoming. Thank you all in this room for coming to hear about the importance of education and breaking down gender barriers to educate youth in East Africa. This is a really important dialogue and we hope it can keep going. And I appreciate you all. So safe trip home. We'll have a couple quick notes from Uju coming up after this. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Victoria. Thank you so much for making my work easier with all of those things. On behalf of AKFC, we'll just also echo a big thank you to all of our speakers, to Global Affairs Canada for continuing to support the work that we do here at AKFC. Thank you to everyone who has joined us both in person and online. And quickly, I would just like to share a bit of announcements for us who are in the room. Maybe for those who are familiar with AKFC, or maybe you're not so familiar with AKFC, we do run a number of public engagement events here at our building. So if events like this are things that you're interested in and you're not already subscribed to our mailing list, please go ahead and do so. On one of the tables outside, you can find the information to scan a QR code and access that information, or you can see me or any AKFC staff around to be able to help you navigate getting onto our mailing list. And then we just also want to share a couple of quick upcoming events that we have. So this weekend actually is Doors Open Ottawa, and the delegation, our building, is going to be participating in Doors Open Ottawa. So if you want to come, really immerse yourself in the building, have a tour, learn more about, the AGACON Development Network, AKFC, the work that we're doing, come with, friends, family, your children, whatever. We just invite you to come visit us, June 1st and 2nd. We're open 10 to 4. And then after that, on June 6th, we're having a youth fellowship reception. So AKFC every year sends a group of young Canadians to different countries where we run our programs, and they participate in a fellowship program. And this year we'll be celebrating the cohort, some of them are in the room today as well, who will be embarking on their journey from this year. And then we'll also have an opportunity to hear from other people, have a reception, a networking reception. So if that also sounds of interest to you, information is outside on one of the tables, or you can speak to me to make sure that you're aware of that. And now finally, before you leave this room, we'd really love to hear from you. So I think momentarily a QR code will come up on the screen. It will start off with me inviting you to give some personal reflections on today's conversation. So we've heard a lot about education, Victoria's story, the role of Canada, and just so much that has happened. So if you can pull out your devices to scan the QR code and share your reflections, and then that link will also transition you into, more responses that we want to hear from you, just about how today's event went, any suggestions, comments that you have as we continue to put on more events like this. So once again, thank you so much, and we hope that you enjoy the refreshments as you head out this evening.